Welcome to this episode of Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment with God. This series is a survey of the Gospel of Mark, looking for how Jesus models what is now called secure attachment, which is the physiological, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual experience of what is often called salvation or regeneration or being conjoined with God or enlightenment, individuation, even becoming spiritual. Through the series, we will discover the benefits of becoming securely attached with God, which is the transformation of one's life into one of joy and satisfaction. And we come to Mark chapter 4, and there are 4 stories that Jesus tells. There are different settings he's telling them in to large groups of people or just to his apostles. And a couple of things I'm noting here based on this premise that Jesus is modeling someone who's securely attached. He's walking from town to town. He's relying on the goodwill of the people, and they apparently are feeding the apostles and Jesus and giving them places to stay. And yet he's not really worried about what people are thinking about him. And at the same time, he knows he'll get what he needs physically and spiritually. There's a confidence, there is a living from abundance, there's an assurance that the process of life is going to go on as it's supposed to. And of course, it starts the same as we've experienced, that there are many failures in life, but there can be one really good experience that then produces a large effect. So all that Jesus has been through, nonetheless, these people are coming out by the thousands, and that's surely giving him the message that he is offering something of value that is helping people. And that must have been very encouraging. And then the next thing I notice is he's being a teacher here. And I step back and I ask myself, well, what's the optimal circumstance for me to learn from a teacher? What is the optimal setting in which to hear what the speaker has to say? What are the conditions that have to be in place for me to be inspired, to see the light, to gain the benefit of what the teacher is offering? And Jesus is going to speak to this in a minute, but the first thing I notice is that I'm curious and that I am listening. And that listening is indicative of an open mind and an open heart to someone who is offering me this model of being secure in themselves, aware of their inner value, and being in the present moment, offering something that is actually transformative, right? This means I can't judge the speaker, and I can't be critical of what they're saying along the way or trying to catch them out in some error that they might be making or quibbling with what they say, right? I'm humbly listening as I believe they know what they're talking about and have something to offer, and that they are on the way with me. It's not like they are superior to me. I'm hearing what they have to say because I'm listening to their heart and to their ideas, because I feel connected to the speaker. I feel connected to the teacher. So having all said that, amongst the first things that Jesus says to his apostles is that he's going to teach them the secret of the kingdom of heaven. But then he never actually tells them any secrets. He tells them stories. And those stories actually do offer new information, but also a new way of looking at life. And that would have caught their attention and would have perhaps stopped them to wonder what is going on here. And so I believe that's one of the reasons Jesus uses these simple stories based on nature that the listener can actually connect to. The Gospel of Mark it's simple, it's plain, it's straightforward spoken story of Jesus Christ. Along the way, there is this invitation for us to listen, to look both within the stories that are being told and look for the model that Jesus is giving to us in these stories of how to live, and so to look within ourselves and our relationship with our God, with the source, with the universe. So as Jesus went through this very first process of his ministry, and it began with those temptation battles in the wilderness, and then the rift of the disruption of his life when he walked away from the synagogue and he chose never to go back, he is introducing people to this new and often difficult good news, which is what the gospel is. In chapter 4, we see this style that he proposes a challenging question. He asks, is a lamp supposed to be put under a bushel or under a bed? And then he tells the story, a parable. And he regularly leaves the reader to answer the question for themselves. Now, he does take his apostles aside and explains things, but by and large, we're told that whenever he's speaking, he's telling a parable and he's leading people to get the message. There's no further instruction about what the point of the apostle was to the general public. So he's forcing us to think in a new way. He's introducing people to think in a different and a new way, and he's doing it masterfully, using these images and experiences that were quite familiar to them and that we have some relationship to. We know about how plants grow and how seeds grow and so forth. This is humbling to watch a teacher do this. At the same time, he's asking a lot of us. The premise is he's reaching out to us spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and he's modeling for us this mystery of connection, of seeking love for another and from another with the capacity with which we are created to do. I stop and I think, I want to feel joy. Don't we all want to feel joy, right? And what's being displayed here is that joy is generated only by delighting in another's joy. That sense of completeness of relationship brings that joy. That sense of completeness is only achieved by being part of the flow of life into us, from God, from the source, from the universe, and through us out into another person. We do not experience the joy without being in that flow, and so in the completion of our reach for connection. And of course, God is flowing into the other person, right? And the universe is working through them and manifesting love through them, and so out to us. And that's why we're told that true joy is to feel another's joy as one's own. So this is the original give and take, the original win-win that I think Jesus is proposing here. And it is inherent in our beings as human beings to have the capacity to be in that relationship. And so, as we find in Mark chapter 4, Jesus teaches us that the listener determines how much we get from the speaker. To feel another's joy is joy in oneself. That's my work, my task, my opportunity. And this is a hard saying. This is something that's challenging. And then at the end of a couple of these stories, Jesus says, to those who listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. But for those who are not listening, even what little understanding they have will be taken away from them. This is a new way of looking at things. And it just stands out as a spiritual principle, not a merely natural one, like was given, for instance, in the Ten Commandments, where you do unto others, or the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do to you. There's a spiritual principle behind that. One of the stories about going to the marketplace, and you go with your money and you go to the table of the person selling grain, and you would say to them, look, I need this much money's worth of grain. And the merchant would bring out a vessel and would measure the wheat into it, and you would get that much wheat for that much money. It wasn't the case that you came with your bowl And the deal was that however large your bowl, that's how much you got for that amount of money. You didn't provide the measure was provided by the seller. But Jesus is teaching something new, a spiritual principle. You bring the measure. And in this perfect world in which you're loved and you feel loved and love others, right? That measure is filled. So this is a new model. It's a challenge to us to play our part in that model. Can we be the person that fills our loved one's measure to the brim with no regard for what that measure was, for what that capacity was? When you learn this new spiritual principle in your relationship with others, you then realize that this is a relationship with this loving God who loves unconditionally, who fills your measure, who is abundant, right? And this is what he said. If you listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. If you bring your measure, it will be filled, it will be completed. But Jesus goes on to say, if you're not listening, even what little understanding you have will be taken away. And that seems harsh. This is the other side of the coin, right? This is the hard lesson. It might be the original of hard lessons. My heart cries out for the person. I don't want to take anything away from them. I want to show mercy. I want to show grace. Now, again, stepping back for a moment here, the premise is that if I am securely attached, if I know my worth, if I know my value, if I don't need to argue, if I know how to express my love, what my emotions are, and so forth, what is it like then to recognize that it's the listener that determines what they're going to take, what they're going to get? I want to be merciful. I want to be kind. I want to give people a chance to succeed, right? I really want to give my neighbor the means to rise up out of any distress they're in. Maybe it's information. That's all they need. I just need to tell them something. I don't have to do anything for them, just pass it on. And if they listen to me, then they get the information. Or maybe it's kindness. Maybe I want to be kind to this person and have no regard for whether they've earned it or not. Or maybe it's resources. Can I give of my resources to someone else without regard for any judgment about how they're not getting their own resources, right? We often band together, don't we? So that we can share resources to lift people into a higher standard of living or into more knowledge that will be helpful to them, or giving them a greater skill so that they can use to lift themselves up. And we talk about teaching someone to fish so that they can always have food. That's really what we want to do. And again, if Jesus is this famous teacher and miracle worker and the embodiment of unconditional love, I expect an answer. The way to do that, the way to be kind, to be giving, to come from abundance so that people aren't left with nothing. Okay, so we have to pause for a moment here and step back, because that's not what Jesus just said. He said, those who don't listen, whatever little they have will be taken away from them. And that's a hard saying. So we pause and put aside for a moment this quest for finding a solution. Maybe that's just me being a male, right? But putting aside the need to process this, to reason it through, and take a moment to observe what's going on inside my mind, what's going on inside my heart when I feel that confusion or that agony or that wish that for some result. So I take a breath, I open my heart and mind, right? Jesus said, listen. So in that moment, I noticed that my plea for an answer to this question, for resolution to the problem, this wish for a revelation of the secret of it all, the understanding of the meaning of the parable. And I noticed that my observation that Jesus has left us hanging, that he doesn't give an answer, he's given us no instructions, he's left us to our own devices. I recognized, to be honest with myself, that really I'm making a complaint, aren't I? I want Jesus to have done it differently. And I'm complaining about it. and I'm not grateful, and I'm upset. It's disturbing. So now stop the complaint for a moment and consider instead that Jesus is actually offering an opportunity for unlimited spiritual growth, for transformation, for salvation, for regeneration. This is our premise, that this wonderful teacher and miracle worker, for some of us, the Son of God, is going to be offering this opportunity of eternal joy and happiness that will be completed by God according to his love and wisdom. That we will find ourselves in a place of joy and satisfaction. That is the whole effort of all the life and love that is in creation. So I invite you to feel the joy of that prospect that it gives you. That when you bring your vessel, your measure, it will be completed. Your Creator has made you a vessel. We're wired for this joy and satisfaction. We're wired for connection with God and with other people. He's made us that vessel, ready to receive this infinite life, even to eternity. So what Jesus is doing here, as I see it, is recognizing that when we are offered that joy and satisfaction, because we have to change what we believe or change what we're doing, that becomes a challenge and we resist. That's the first thing. In this instance, Jesus says, would anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket? Do we continue to do what's crazy sounding, right? And we can pause and say, why do I do that? Why do I always get angry? Oh, why do I always yell? Why do I always lash out? Why do I have to be sarcastic? There's some sort of challenge that we're being given from the world, from circumstances, from our own observation of what we're doing inside ourselves. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Again, that's the challenge, to do it differently, to listen, to recognize our resistance to listening. So, our reach for connection, our reach for love that we are created with, that we're wired to do as part of our original form, is undeveloped at first. And that's why there's this resistance, this complaining. Sadly, too often, the development of this reach for connection is marred by poor modeling or bad treatment, even in the early stages of our life. Jesus went through an ordeal, and he overcame it. He then invites us into that same process, to notice the resistance and to respond by listening. Yes, the universe, our God of love and mercy, is going to give us everything we need to succeed in this transformation, in this process, regeneration, spiritual growth, and connecting in love. God does indeed rescue us. The universe is working in our favor. Why? Because that love is flowing unconditionally, unceasingly. It's right there in the parable. The light is seen when it's put on a stand. The secret is revealed when it is believed and lived. The measure is filled when it's brought to the table. In the Gospel of Luke, as an aside, this same story, Jesus is given to say, give and you will receive. Your gift will be returned to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The measure you give will be the measure you get back. That is the promise of coming from a secure attachment bond. When you recognize your value and your worth, you don't have to be right. You don't have to jump up and be seen. You recognize the worth and value of the other person, and you love that about them. And that experience then emphasizes or manifests your relationship with God, your relationship with the universe, with your Creator. And that gives us an increasing sense of security. So the encouragement is to seek that secure connection with your fellow human beings in all the ways that you can, and then you'll find it with your God, and you'll find it within yourself. You'll live the spiritual meaning of these stories that Jesus is telling. The task that you can take on is to listen. Listen for the goodness and truth in the teaching of your scripture. Listen for the goodness and truth in that other person, in what they're saying, from a heart of love for them. And listen to the universe, to God, to love speaking inside of you. That indeed will give you an experience of that full, large, completed measure of a secure attachment bond with your God. I pray this has supported your transformative life, whatever practice you have in your life. I want to thank Solomon Keel for his music, and I want to invite you to make a contribution to this work if you wish and are able through the PayPal link. And I invite you to continue to listen to the next episode. You be well.